Welcome to the Deep Dive, the place where we really get into the stories and ideas that have shaped us, breaking them down into insights you can actually use. Today, we're tackling something huge, maybe the ultimate story of resilience. Odysseus' incredible, decade-long struggle to get home after the Trojan War.
Hmm.
And look, this isn't just some dusty old myth. It's a really profound look at things like perseverance, loyalty, temptation, identity even. What gets me is how it all still feels so relevant, our own struggles for belonging.
Absolutely. And to really get a handle on Odysseus' journey, you have to understand this Greek concept, nostos.
Nostos.
Okay. Right. It means homecoming, but it's much deeper than just getting back to a place. It's this powerful, sometimes agonizing longing for home, family, your rightful place, especially after being gone for a long, hard time. Lots of heroes came back from Troy, sure. But Odysseus is Nostos. It's legendary. His journey isn't just about sailing dangerous seas. It's like this cosmic battle, defined by angry gods and these unbelievable trials that really push human limits. That's why it's so iconic, I think. The sheer scale of the obstacles makes his return this timeless narrative.
And guiding us through this epic saga today, we're using a source called Odysseus' Perilous Homecoming, an odyssey of trials and triumph. It does a great job distilling Homer's original Odyssey down to its core. So our mission, our goal for this deep dive is pretty ambitious. We want to dig out the really key insights from this epic, not just what happened, but why it happened, and maybe figure out what these ancient stories can still teach us about ourselves.
Exactly. We'll be looking closely at the choices Odysseus makes, those impossible challenges he faces, and what these stories really tell us about human nature, leadership, that deep, deep desire for home. Think of this deep dive as maybe a shortcut, a way to really grasp one of the foundational stories of Western literature. We'll uncover some surprising details, definitely, but also those timeless lessons that still resonate. You'll come away, I hope, not just knowing more, but really appreciating the story that's captivated people for thousands of years. It's truly engaging stuff for anyone interested in history and human stories.
All right, let's dive in. Let's really unpack this, starting right after the Trojan War ends. Odysseus, king of Ithaca, the brilliant strategist behind the Trojan horse. Yes, that Odysseus. He's already spent 10 brutal years fighting, a whole decade away. But then, as our source makes crystal clear, he spends another 10 years just trying to sail home. 20 years in total. It's staggering. Why? Why did it take so incredibly long?
That's the million drachma question, isn't it? And the answer hits you right away. Divine wrath. This isn't just bad weather or getting lost. It's personal. It's cosmic interference. The main player here, his biggest divine enemy, is Poseidon, god of the sea. And it all stems from one specific early encounter.
Ah, the Cyclops.
Exactly. Odysseus blinds Polyphemus, the one-eyed giant who just happens to be Poseidon's son. A big mistake. This act, maybe driven by survival but definitely sealed with pride, brings down the sea god's endless, vengeful anger. This personal vendetta from a major god sets the stage for everything. Supernatural trials, monsters, storms. Often, it's Poseidon directly messing with him. His struggle becomes more than just human. It's him against fate, against a god's fury.
And this divine anger, it seems to kick in almost straight away, doesn't it? Like right after leaving Troy, his first stop, Ismarus, city of the Cicons. Seems like it should have been simple, right? Raid, resupply, move on. What went wrong?
What went wrong is a major failure of discipline, and it's a pattern, really, a dark sign of things to come with his crew. Our source points out his men, probably exhausted, maybe a bit arrogant after winning the war. They raid Ismarus, but then they linger too long. They get caught up in the looting, the wine, the feasting.
Instead of sticking to the plan.
Precisely. It's not just bad timing, it's a breakdown in discipline. And that delay gives the Cicons time to call for backup from inland. The result, a fierce counterattack, heavy Greek losses. It's the first harsh lesson. Greed and lack of discipline cost lives. Right there, it shows how even a small mistake, a moment of letting your guard down, can be fatal in this kind of journey. Sets the stakes incredibly high from the start.
So boom, right away we see the challenge of leadership. Even for someone as clever as Odysseus. He can't always control his men's base instincts, and that has lethal consequences. This failure with the Cicons, it really foreshadows his ongoing struggle with the crew, doesn't it? What does it tell us about leading men who are tired, battle-hardened, maybe more focused on immediate reward than the long game?
It tells us a lot, I think. It shows the gap between being a great battlefield commander, which Odysseus certainly was, and being an expedition leader. Guiding a weary, sometimes mutinous crew through hostile, unknown lands needs a different kind of authority. This first screw-up highlights his difficulty in enforcing absolute discipline and foresight. And yeah, as you said, it echoes again and again. Their impulsiveness, their distrust, their weakness for temptation. These human flaws often end up being more dangerous than any monster they face. It underlines that leadership isn't just giving orders, it's managing morale, ensuring everyone buys into the long-term vision, and dealing with that human tendency towards self-interest. It's about shared responsibility, where one bad decision can sink everyone. A tough lesson in command.
Okay, so after that bloody nose at Ismarus, they sail on, fewer in number already. Next up is the land of the Lotus-Eaters. Sounds, well, almost peaceful compared to the scones, right? People eating a plant. What's the danger there?
The danger isn't physical, it's psychological. Deeply insidious, actually. Our source describes how the lotus plant works. Whoever eats it enters this state of, blissful forgetfulness. They completely forget their desire to return home.
Wow. So it attacks the mission itself.
Exactly. It attacks the nostos, the very drive pushing them forward. The men aren't hurt or enslaved. They just lose their purpose. They lose their connection to their past, their future, their identity. Odysseus sees the danger immediately. He has to physically force them back onto the ship, drag them away from this tempting apathy, kicking and screaming probably, tie them to the rowing benches. This episode brings up a really powerful theme: the temptation of forgetfulness and comfort. It shows that sometimes the biggest threats aren't monsters, but that lure of complacency, the urge to just escape the struggle.
That's really interesting. It flips the idea of danger on its head. It's not an external enemy, but an internal collapse. How does that challenge the whole idea of nostos, that drive for home? And what's it saying about our own human tendency to want to escape hardship, maybe even at the cost of forgetting who we are?
It directly challenges nostos by offering an easy way out. The journey home is hard, right? Painful, dangerous, full of loss. The lotus offers instant peace, effortless escape from all that. Resisting it is crucial for Odysseus because his entire identity, his whole reason for enduring everything, is tied to getting home. If his men lose that desire, they lose themselves. They forget Ithaca, Penelope, Telemachus, everything. It suggests that escaping reality, while tempting, can mean losing your identity, your memories, your agency. Odysseus has to remind them, and maybe himself, that the hard path, the one that requires enduring pain and remembering loss, is the only path back to a meaningful life, back to who they truly are. It's a test of inner strength, not just physical survival.
Okay, so after surviving that psychological temptation, they sail right into maybe the most iconic, most terrifying encounter, the island of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, the one-eyed giant, son of Poseidon. This is where things go seriously wrong for Odysseus, isn't it? This is the big one.
Oh, absolutely. This is the turning point, the moment that changes everything, irrevocably. Odysseus's cunning is brilliant here, no doubt. The plan to blind Polyphemus with the sharpened stake, escaping under the sheep, it's legendary stuff. Pure resourcefulness under pressure. But then comes the fatal mistake, the act of pure hubris. As they're sailing away, safe, Odysseus just can't resist. He shouts back, taunts the blinded giant, and foolishly reveals his name.
Oh no, why? Why do that?
Pride, intoxication of victory, maybe, but it's a catastrophic error, because Polyphemus isn't just some random monster. He's Poseidon's son, and when Polyphemus prays to his father for vengeance, naming Odysseus specifically, that's it. Poseidon unleashes his full, enduring fury. Our source is explicit. This is the start of Poseidon's targeted wrath, the direct cause of the next 10 years of torment.
Wow. So that one moment of pride, that need to boast, curses the next decade. It really begs that classic Greek question, doesn't it? Is Odysseus' suffering down to the gods just messing with him, or is it a direct result of his own character flaws, like that hubris? How does this Cyclops incident set the tone for everything that follows?
It's a complex mix, and that's what makes it so compelling. It perfectly captures that Greek tension between fate, divine will, and human choice. Yes, Poseidon's anger is the direct instrument of his suffering, an overwhelming force he can't fight head-on. But that anger was provoked by Odysseus' own act of hubris, so his suffering is punishment for his pride, absolutely. But it's carried out with the gods' immense power, relentless storms, monsters, constant delays. This event sets the tone because it establishes that Odysseus isn't just fighting monsters or navigating tricky waters anymore. He's fighting a personal vendetta from a powerful, angry god. Every storm, every setback from now on carries the weight of that curse. It turns his journey into this high-stakes game against divine forces, constantly testing his resilience and maybe his ability to learn from his mistakes.
Okay, so he's angered a major god. You'd think, maybe lie low. But then comes a moment of incredible hope. They meet Aeolus, the god of the winds, and Aeolus is generous, gives them a bag holding all the bad winds, leaving just the gentle west wind to blow them straight home. They get so close they can actually see Ithaca.
It's almost unbearably cruel, isn't it? That closeness makes the next part so tragic.
Yeah.
The source paints this agonizing picture. His men, seeing this tied-up bag, get suspicious. They think Odysseus is hiding treasure from them.
Oh, the trust issue again.
Exactly. That recurring problem. Driven by greed and distrust, they open it just as Ithaca comes into sight. Imagine that. Seeing home, smelling the air, and then wish all the trapped storm winds explode out, creating this massive tempest that blows them right back to where they started, back to Aeolus's island. And Aeolus, he's furious, disgusted by their stupidity, their ingratitude. He refuses to help them again. The lesson is hammered home again, brutally. Distrust and disobedience bring ruin, another self-inflicted disaster, fueled by the crew's flaws.
So it's not just external forces, and not just Odysseus' own mistakes, but his crew's repeated failures, their lack of trust, their indiscipline that keep derailing them. This really seems like a constant devastating theme, doesn't it? His struggle to maintain control. What does it say about, like, shared responsibility on a mission like this, and just how hard it is to leave when people are exhausted, scared, maybe greedy?
It says it's incredibly hard. It highlights the fragility of morale and discipline under extreme, prolonged stress. Odysseus is smart, he's a leader, but he can't micromanage every single person, every single moment. His men, despite their bravery at Troy, just keep succumbing to basic human weaknesses: greed, suspicion, impatience, superstition. This incident, right after the Cicones, shows that shared responsibility is dangerous. The whole group suffers for the mistakes of a few. Think about the toll. 10 years of war, now years of terrifying wandering. It wears people down, erodes judgment. His command is this constant, exhausting battle against external dangers and internal human failings. It's a raw look at the limits and burdens of leadership.
Okay, so if angry gods and unreliable crews weren't enough, they then encounter the Laestrygonians. These are giant cannibals. Sound terrifying. What happens here? Is this another mistake or just bad luck?
This one feels like pure catastrophic bad luck, or maybe just the sheer random horror of the mythical world they're in. The Laestrygonians are these enormous, monstrous beings. They attack Odysseus's fleet while it's moored in their harbor. They use huge boulders to smash the ships to pieces. Then they start spearing the sailors like fish. It's just utter destruction. Our source emphasizes the scale of the loss. They destroy all ships except Odysseus's. He's left with just one single vessel.
Just one ship left out of the whole fleet.
Just one. There's no obvious lesson about hubris or disobedience here. It's just overwhelming brute force. It underlines the raw, unpredictable danger of their world. Sometimes, despite everything, you just run into something monstrous and unstoppable, and the losses are devastating. It forces Odysseus into this new phase, a lone ship, drastically reduced crew facing the rest of the journey.
From a fleet to a single ship. The odds just keep getting longer. From that devastation, they limp to Aea, the island of Circe, the famous enchantress who turns men into pigs. Another classic mythological trap. How does Odysseus handle this one? Does he fall into the trap?
This is where Odysseus really shows his unique combination of skills, his cunning, yes, but also his ability to get divine help and even negotiate with powerful beings. So Circe does turn his scouting party into pigs, just like the stories say. But Odysseus, according to our source, gets help from the god Hermes.
Hermes steps in.
Right. Hermes gives him a magical herb, moly, that makes him immune to Circe's magic. But Odysseus doesn't just resist, he confronts her. He uses that immunity, plus his own charisma, maybe. He wins her trust. Instead of becoming another victim, he turns the situation around. They end up staying on her island for a whole year.
A whole year? Why so long?
The source suggests it symbolizes seduction and stagnation, a tempting pause. But it's not entirely wasted time. Critically, Circe eventually becomes an ally. She gives him vital advice, telling him he needs to journey to the underworld. So this encounter shows his adaptability. He turns a deadly enemy into a crucial advisor. It shows he can navigate temptation, but also use even these delays strategically.
That's fascinating, how a potential disaster becomes a key alliance. What does that say about his ability to, read situations, gain allies, even from enemies, and that balance he strikes between giving in to temptation, staying a year, and keeping his eye on the prize, getting home?
It says he's incredibly pragmatic and resourceful. He doesn't just fight or flee. He engages, assesses, and often finds a way to turn the situation to his advantage. He recognizes Circe's power, respects it, and somehow earns her respect in return. This ability to forge alliances, even with ambiguous or dangerous figures, is key to his eventual success. The year-long stay. Yes, it's a delay, a moment of potential stagnation, maybe even forgetting his purpose for a while. But crucially, he doesn't get stuck there forever. He retained his ultimate goal, his Nostos, and he leverages that relationship with Circe to get indispensable knowledge for the journey ahead. It shows that even seductive dangers can yield vital insights if you have the foresight and the willpower to eventually move on. He makes the experience serve his ultimate mission.
And that advice from Circe leads him somewhere truly unique, deeply unsettling. A literal journey to the underworld, the Nicaea. This feels like a major shift, doesn't it? From fighting monsters to, well, communing with the dead. What's the purpose of this descent?
It's got a dual purpose, really both very practical and deeply philosophical. On the practical side, our source explains he goes there specifically to consult the ghost of the blind prophet Tiresias.
Tiresias, the famous seer.
Exactly. Even in death, Tiresias has foresight. He gives Odysseus critical warnings about future dangers, especially the warning about Helios' cattle, which turns out to be absolutely vital. But beyond that, it's profoundly personal. Odysseus sees the spirit of his own mother, Anticlea. He learns she died of grief during his long absence. That's a heavy blow.
Oh, wow. That's brutal.
It is. He also talks with heroes from Troy, Achilles, Agamemnon. He gets this chilling perspective on glory, death, the afterlife. The source calls this part deeply introspective and philosophical. It really shifts the focus inward. He's confronting his past, his losses, the consequences of his absence, and glimpsing the future, all in this realm of shadows. It's transformative.
So why is this trip to the land of the dead so essential for his homecoming? What kind of knowledge or maybe inner strength can you only get from an experience like that, something so profound and probably traumatic?
I think it's essential because it gives him a depth of understanding he couldn't get anywhere else. The warnings from Tiresias are life-saving, tactically speaking. But seeing his mother, hearing Achilles lament his choice of glory over long life, that forces Odysseus to grapple with the real cost of his journey, the suffering back home, the nature of mortality itself. It's like a spiritual tempering. It deepens his resolve, clarifies his purpose. His Nostos isn't just about getting back to his palace anymore. It's about reclaiming his life, his family, his humanity, armed with this hard-won, somber wisdom. He understands the why behind his struggle on a much deeper level after this. It fuels his endurance for what's still to come.
Armed with that heavy wisdom, he goes back to Circe's island. Not to relax, but for more specific practical advice, right? She basically gives him a cheat sheet for the next horrors.
Exactly. She's a full-on ally now. Our source lists her precise instructions like a seasoned guide preparing him for the deadliest stretch. She tells him exactly how to handle the sirens, plug the crew's ears with wax. She details the impossible choice between Scylla and Charybdis, and she gives that incredibly strong warning. Avoid harming the cattle of Helios at all costs. This specific, preemptive guidance is huge. It contrasts sharply with earlier trials where they stumbled in blind. Now, thanks to Circe and Tiresias, Odysseus can actually plan, strategize, prepare his men. It's wisdom put into action.
That shift from reacting blindly to preparing strategically feels really significant. How does it underscore the importance of, well, wisdom and preparation when you're facing dangers that seem almost designed to be unbeatable?
It fundamentally changes the game. Before, it was often courage versus the unknown, leading to tragic improvisation and loss. Now, armed with knowledge, Odysseus can make calculated decisions. It highlights that while brute strength or quick wits might save you in the moment, long-term survival against overwhelming odds depends on foresight, planning, and reliable intelligence, even if that intelligence comes from, a sorceress or a ghost. It shows that even the greatest hero needs good advice. Preparation can mitigate disaster. Knowledge really is power, especially in a world full of mythical perils. It elevates Odysseus' leadership from just being brave to being genuinely shrewd.
And then that wisdom gets tested immediately with the sirens. The bird women whose song is lethally irresistible, luring sailors to crash on the rocks. How does Odysseus, following Circe's advice, navigate this? His strategy is pretty famous, isn't it?
Oh, it's one of the most iconic scenes. He follows Circe's advice perfectly, but adds his own twist. Our source details it. He plugs his men's ears with beeswax, so they're completely deaf to the song. Safe. But Odysseus himself, he wants to hear it. Out of curiosity, maybe, or a desire to know everything. So he has his men tie himself to the mast tightly. He orders them not to untie him no matter how much he begs until they're safely past.
He actually listened to the song,
Yeah.
knowing it drives men mad.
Yes. It shows incredible self-control, foresight, and frankly, a kind of intellectual boldness. The source points to the symbolism. The dangerous allure of knowledge and temptation. He confronts this overwhelming sensory temptation directly, but safely contained. It's about experiencing the allure without succumbing.
That's such a striking image. Wanting to know, to experience even something lethally dangerous,
Yeah.
but having the discipline not to be destroyed by it. What does that tell us about him? That he can face that kind of ultimate temptation and still stay focused on his goal.
I think it speaks to his complexity. He's not just a brute warrior or a simple survivor. He has this deep curiosity about the world, even its darkest, most dangerous corners. He wants to understand the siren's song, perhaps believing it holds some profound truth or beauty, even if deadly. But crucially, his desire for knowledge doesn't override his ultimate purpose nostos. He finds a way to satisfy his curiosity without jeopardizing the mission or his life. It's a remarkable demonstration of self-mastery, willpower overriding primal urges. He confronts temptation on his own terms and wins. It makes him more than just a hero. It makes him maybe a kind of philosopher-adventurer.
Okay, from the siren song to another impossible choice. Scylla and Charybdis. The six-headed monster versus the giant whirlpool. Circe warned him, lose some men to Scylla, or lose the whole ship to Charybdis. A classic no-win scenario. What does Odysseus choose, and what does this moment teach us about leadership?
It's the ultimate rock-in-a-hard-place dilemma. Our source is clear. Odysseus makes the grim, calculated choice. He steers closer to Scylla. He chooses Scylla, losing 6 men but avoiding total destruction. He knows sailing near Scylla means sacrificing those men. He can hear their screams as she snatches them off the deck. It's horrific. But the alternative, Charybdis, meant certain death for everyone. The explicit lesson here, according to the text, is stark. Sometimes leadership means choosing the lesser evil. It's a brutal insight into the realities of command in extreme situations.
Choosing who lives and who dies. That's an unbelievably heavy burden for a leader. How do leaders make those kinds of impossible calls, sacrificing a few for the many? What does this moment reveal about the ethics or the sheer weight of command?
It reveals that leadership, at its toughest, demands a kind of ruthless pragmatism. It's not about finding a good solution. Sometimes it's about finding the least bad one. Odysseus makes a calculated decision based on maximizing survival for the group, even at a terrible individual cost. It highlights the isolation of command. He has to make the call and live with the consequences, the grief, the guilt. It's the ethics of necessity. The mission survival, the chance of anyone getting home outweighs the loss, however painful. It's a defining moment that shows his willingness to make the hard, unpopular, tragic choice for the greater objective. It separates him from someone who might freeze or try to avoid the choice altogether.
And the trials just don't stop. Next, they land on Thrinacia, the island of Helios, the sun god. And despite Circe's warning, despite Tiresias' prophecy, despite Odysseus pleading with them, his men make a fatal mistake. The final mistake for them, right? What happens?
This is the point of no return for the crew. The ultimate act of disobedience driven by desperation. They get stranded on the island by bad winds, run out of food, and despite Odysseus making them swear an oath not to touch the sacred cattle of the sun god while he's away praying or sleeping, they break. Led by Eurylochus, they disobey and slaughter the sacred cattle. They feast on them. It's not just killing animals, it's profound sacrilege against a powerful god.
And the consequences.
Immediate and absolute. Helios demands retribution from Zeus, and Zeus complies. As they finally set sail, Zeus destroys their ship with a storm. A lightning bolt shatters the mast. Our source states it with finality. All men die. Odysseus alone survives, clinging to the wreckage. This is it, the end of his crew.
Gut-wrenching. Is this purely Zeus punishing their impiety? Or is it also the tragic, inevitable endpoint for a crew that repeatedly showed these flaws, the greed at Ismarus, the distrust with Aeolus' bag? And what does it mean for Odysseus, psychologically, to be the only one left, to carry on completely alone?
It feels like both. It's definitely divine retribution for a specific terrible act of sacrilege. You don't mess with the sun god's cows. But it's also the grim culmination of their recurring failures. Their inability to follow orders, control their base urges, hunger this time, or respect the sacred. It finally catches up with them in the most final way possible. It echoes those earlier mistakes, but with ultimate consequences. For Odysseus, it's almost unimaginable. He's lost every single man who sailed with him from Troy. The burden of survival, the loneliness, the guilt, it must be immense. It elevates his endurance to something almost superhuman, but also deeply tragic. He is now truly the sole survivor, defined by loss as much as by his will to return home. It's a profound isolation.
So, completely alone, adrift, he washes up on Ogygia, Calypso's island. She's a beautiful nymph. This isn't a monster fight, but it's a different kind of trial, isn't it?
Oh.
A long, slow test of his loyalty, his nostos. What happens there?
Calypso represents the ultimate temptation to just give up the struggle. She's beautiful, divine, and she falls in love with him. She keeps him on her island paradise for 7 years. 7 years. And she offers him the ultimate prize, immortality if he stays, eternal life, eternal youth, comfort, love with a goddess. It's the complete opposite of his painful, mortal quest for home.
But he refuses.
He refuses. Our source emphasizes this. Despite everything Calypso offers, he longs for Ithaca and Penelope. He spends his days weeping on the shore, staring out at the sea, desperate for his mortal life, his aging wife, his kingdom. His loyalty, his nostos, is stronger than the lure of godhood. It takes divine intervention again. Athena pleads his case to Zeus, who sends Hermes to order his release. Even the gods seem to acknowledge that keeping him there is fundamentally unjust, that his desire for home is too powerful to deny forever.
7 years choosing mortality and memory over immortality and bliss. That's incredible. What does this choice, this prolonged test, reveal about what humans ultimately value? But identity, belonging, meaning, maybe finding meaning because life is finite.
I think it reveals that, for Odysseus at least, identity is tied to his specific human contest. Being king of Ithaca, husband to Penelope, father to Telemachus, that's who he is. Immortality with Calypso would mean losing all that, becoming someone else, detached from his roots, his responsibilities, his history. The desire for belonging, for connection to family and community, proves stronger than the desire to escape death. It suggests that maybe meaning isn't found in endless, painless existence, but in the commitments, the struggles, the relationships, the legacy we build within our limited mortal lives. His Nostos isn't just about a place, it's about reclaiming his authentic self, the life that holds meaning for him.
Okay, so he's finally released, but Poseidon hasn't forgotten, right? One last storm. He gets help, though, from Athena again, and reaches Phaeacia, the land of these almost magical seafarers. What's the significance of this final stop before Ithaca?
Phaeacia is crucial. It's like the bridge back to the human world after all the myths and monsters. The Phaeacians are famous for their shipbuilding, their kindness, and especially their hospitality, their xenia. They find Odysseus washed ashore, naked and battered. They take him in, clothe him, feed him. And importantly, our source says, they are moved by his tale.
Ah, so this is where he tells his story.
Exactly. This is where he recounts his entire journey. All those trials we've just discussed, the Cyclops, Circe, the Underworld, Calypso, he tells it all to the Phaeacian king and queen, Alcinous and Arete. And they, fulfilling their role as perfect hosts, are amazed. They shower him with gifts, more than he lost at Troy, and promise to sail him home to Ithaca on one of their magically swift ships. It's his final transition.
So this is where we, the audience, and the Phaeacians hear the whole story from Odysseus himself. What does it mean for him to actually tell that story after living it for so long? And how does the Phaeacians' incredible hospitality contrast with, say, the Cyclops?
Telling the story is incredibly important for Odysseus. It's a way of processing the trauma, making sense of the chaos, reclaiming his own narrative after years of being tossed about by fate and monsters. It reestablishes his identity, not as a victim, but as the hero who endured. It's cathartic. And the Phaeacians' xenia is the absolute gold standard. Remember, xenia was sacred in Greece, protected by Zeus. It was about the proper way to treat strangers, offering safety, food, respect. The Phaeacians do it perfectly. Contrast that with Polyphemus, the Cyclops, who represents the most horrific violation of xenia imaginable, trapping and eating his guests. The Phaeacians show the civilized ideal. The Cyclops shows barbaric chaos. This contrast highlights the moral order Odysseus is fighting to return to. The Phaeacians provide the safe, respectful space he needs to finally bridge the gap back home.
And then, finally, after 20 years, Ithaca, he's home. But it's not a simple arrival, is it? Athena disguises him as a beggar. Why disguise? What's waiting for him in his own palace?
The disguise is absolutely critical. He can't just walk in as the returning king. Why? Because his palace is completely overrun. More than 100 arrogant suitors have basically moved in, eating his food, drinking his wine, harassing his wife Penelope, and plotting to kill his son Telemachus. They all assume Odysseus is long dead.
Wow. So his home is hostile territory.
Exactly. Walking in undisguised would be suicide. The beggar disguise lets him scope things out, see who's still loyal, who's betrayed him, and plan his move. Our source details the climax. He gets help from his few loyal allies, Telemachus, the swineherd Eumaeus, the cowherd Philoetius. He endures abuse from the suitors. Then, at the right moment, during an archery contest only he can win, he reveals himself. And then he slaughters the suitors. It's brutal, righteous vengeance, a reclaiming of his house by force. But even after that, there's one final crucial test. Penelope, ever cautious, tests him to ensure it's really Odysseus, the famous bed test. Only after passing that does she fully accept him. Then finally, Ithaca is reclaimed, peace is restored. With Athena smoothing things over with the suitors' angry families, the long journey is truly over.
The disguise makes so much sense strategically. And Penelope's bed test. It's so intimate, so powerful. What does it symbolize about trust, identity, recognition? Especially after being separated for so long through so much trauma. And Athena's role, always there. How does it bring it all together?
The disguise is pure strategy, yes. It lets him turn the tables. But Penelope's test, oh, it's profound. It's not about recognizing his face after 20 years, or even a scar. It's about shared secret knowledge. Their marriage bed, carved by Odysseus from a living olive tree, rooted into the ground, it's unmovable. Only the real Odysseus would know that detail. It symbolizes the deep, unshakable foundation of their marriage, their shared history, a truth only they know. It's the ultimate proof of identity. Bypassing superficial appearances, it speaks to trust built on deep intimacy, recognition that goes beyond the physical. And Athena, her constant aid, from rescuing him at sea to guiding his strategy against the suitors, and finally brokering peace, it provides the divine counterweight to Poseidon's wrath. It shows that his piety, his endurance, his connection to the gods who favor him ultimately ensures his success. It brings the divine element full circle, showing that while one god hinders, another helps, and human resilience bridges the gap.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. What an absolutely incredible story. We've covered so much ground. It really was more than just sailing and fighting monsters, wasn't it? It feels like a journey deep into the human spirit.
Oh, much more. As our source kept emphasizing, it's an emotional, spiritual, and psychological journey. It's this timeless exploration of human perseverance, loyalty against all odds, the many faces of temptation, and that deep ache of separation and the longing for connection. We've tried to pull out those key nuggets, those insights that aren't just about Odysseus, but about enduring human themes.
So maybe a final thought for everyone listening, something to take away from this ancient epic. The Odyssey remains one of the most profound explorations of what it truly means to come home after great trauma and time.
And building on that, maybe ask yourself, what does homecoming mean for you? Not just getting back to a physical place, but maybe that deeper journey of rediscovering yourself, reconnecting, reclaiming who you are after your own challenges. How do you navigate your own personal odysseys? What's your quest for belonging look like? Something to think about.
From all of us here at The Deep Dive, thank you so much for joining us on this epic voyage through Odysseus's trials and triumphs. We hope you found it insightful, maybe even inspiring. We'll catch you on the next Deep Dive.